There
dolls
it
look
is.
exactly like him in the face?
Oh my God. It is Peter Quill perfectly to a T.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we have our special guest, Ashley, because today we're going to be talking about Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 1, 2, and 3. But we're going to be doing it a little different. We're not going to be doing it exactly the same way. We're just going to do more of a discussion on. So, Guardians of the Galaxy 2014, written and directed by James Gunn. Cast includes Chris Pratt, Vin Diesel, Bradley Cooper. This goes on and on.
Yeah, based on some characters returning or new characters being added in based on the storyline that's going on. The core members are still there. And James Gunn was still a part of all three, thank God.
I think the way that they started the first movie was a good way to catch everyone's eye because it's something so dramatic and so a lot of people can relate to it. A lot of people who have lost a loved one.
Well, I think also too part of the first movie is there are characters that aren't really that majorly popular in the comic book world. So Marvel taking a risk on putting big names in this movie. They obviously had a lot of faith in James Gunn to do this well. But at the same time, there was a lot of flack going on. Like, you're making a Guardians of the Galaxy movie right now? What? Like, a lot of people were saying that. But then when it came out, everyone's heads turned around and went, oh, sorry, that was awesome. I think they did a really good job of bringing that to the screen and those characters and making you feel and like the characters. I think they did a really good job with the casting, the writing, and the story-wise for that first movie. I felt for them. Like, there was a moment near the end when Peter and Gamora are looking at each other, like whatever's happening at the very end. I kind of shed a tear because I know what's about to happen, and I'm like, oh, man. This is so short-lived. I feel so bad for you. But, like, that's only because I know what's happening. But as a first watcher, this is a fun, just energetic action sci-fi movie. It doesn't really feel like a Marvel movie at this point, you know?
No, it doesn't. Especially for the language and suggestiveness in it. It's like you're never guess.
The CGI is perfect.
Yeah.
It was really good.
I agree.
Very, very well done. One scene always resembles in my mind when I think of them is when Chris Pratt's holding up the ball and he tells him how dangerous what's inside the orb is, and then he drops it and he catches it and he goes, ooh, and that was like a flop. He wasn't supposed to do that. He just did that on set. He accidentally dropped it and caught it midair and brought it back up. We're keeping that because that fits perfectly with the theme of the movie. That this orb is, super dangerous, but yet they throw it around so easily at all times until they find out what it is. On first watch, Ash, had you read any of the comics or anything? Did you know anything about them?
I've heard of the movies, just not of the comics. I watched the movies and I was like, well, they definitely have a comic of this. And then I got all 4 of the issues of the Groot series. It's a really small series, but I didn't read it yet.
See, I didn't read any of those comics either, but I knew of them. I just didn't know anything about them. For me, going into the movie was very, very limited of my knowledge of it. So, like, when I first watched it, I was going into it, okay, it's another Marvel movie. But luckily, it talked about, like, the Nova Corps, and I knew about the Nova Corps because of Nova. They really tried to keep all the major players out of this film to make it kind of its own thing on its own, which I really kind of appreciated for Marvel to take a step like that and do something like that.
No, I agree.
And then the sequel came out. What did you guys think of that?
That's the one with Kurt Russell in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That one I like.
But the second one, it shows you, okay, why Peter could grab that Infinity Stone at the end of the first one. I mean, they explained it a little bit at the end, but they're like, oh, we don't know how to explain it, but you're only half human. They didn't know what the other part was, Celestial. I think Kurt Russell did a really good job playing Ego. He's very, very happy and nice at the beginning, but he does do a very good evil tone as he slips and shows his true self by the end.
I like the second movie. like the plot twist of like when the dad ends up being the one who gave the mom the cancer. That was like really good plot.
Like I like Kurt Russell anyway. And then you get to like know what exactly happened. It's like, wow, what a heartless son of a bitch.
Right? To find out that he just used her to plant a seed in the planet, but plant a seed in her
Right.
to use that child as, and I mean, that's the whole reason Yondu picked him up, was because he was hired by Ego to get him and bring him home. And they do say that in the beginning of the first movie, but you just don't really catch on what they're talking about. But he's like, we should have brought him to his father. You hear them talking about it, but you don't really think about it until the second movie happens, and you're like, oh crap. He was meant to go there long before, Kurt Russell's character Ego gave mom cancer. It was a way for him to get Peter not wanting to be on Earth anymore, and that was like his reasoning for doing it.
Especially for it being a Marvel movie, because I feel like a lot of Marvel movies are stereotypical, but I feel like this one is like it's different. It's not your typical superhero, supervillain. He fights a superhero and then it's over. It's like you meet new people who all have a different background on why they're there, and it's like this whole different world. I just think it's really cool.
It's kind of like Star Wars too, because you
That's
have all
what I was
these
thinking.
yeah,
Yeah,
they have all
it's
these creatures.
Yeah, and it's almost like building a family from people that don't have a family, but they come together to become a family. Because they meet Mantis, they bring Mantis in. I think that was a really, really great addition. The new Groot, which isn't the same as old Groot, but you get that, the family, we're raising him. Like, the funny jokes are like, Groot, get off your video game. And the jokes are great. They really do a good job of meshing comedy with the dramaticness, but still keeping it a Marvel movie at the same time. I think James Gunn should be doing more Marvel instead of head of DC. Anyway,
I think he should be doing. If he makes movies like that, then I'm not a comic book. I'm not a comic book person at all. I just like what I like. But those movies, they had, like you said, they had the emotional attachment to it because you get to know these characters. Like you said with Rocket, he comes off all hard and everything, but the more you get to know him, he's not as hard as you think. But then you find out what happened to him, and then it's just like Heartbreak City from there.
And that leads us into the third one. I mean, that movie's so heartbreaking.
I know.
Rocket being manipulated, maneuvered, whatever you want to call it, into what he is, but he creates these friends. They become a family, and then he escapes and he thinks he's gonna get them all out, but in his escape, they all end up tragically dying around him. That is a heartbreaking opening for his character and what we see him in the original one. And watching that and then seeing what he's like in the original one, you can see how hardened he gotten over the years. Because by Guardians 1, he said, I escaped from 22 prisons. First one was the heartbreaking one that made him who he is. He really let it go and forgot all about it for a long time. But, I mean, obviously it was always in the back of his mind. I think that's why he kind of gravitated towards being part of the Guardians as a family, because that's what he wanted then. He couldn't have it. Now he wants it. And that's why he freaks out when Groot dies in the first one. He loses it. He's sitting there bawling his eyes out. Now we see why.
This movie on the innocence of the little boy being by himself. Okay, he doesn't even have a dad. Okay, so he's kind of a rebel. Then you have a bunch of the animals. Like, you go from a child who is innocent, so you feel bad for them, and then there's these animals that can't fight for themselves, so you feel bad for them. So they have that emotional attachment already sucking you in.
Right.
So but that is a form of good writing and directing, because without it, you wouldn't have that.
I think the soundtrack too, for especially all of them were good, but I feel like the first one for the intro is really good.
Oh yeah. And I know a lot of people watching the third one might be like, oh, what's going on with Gamora? I don't understand this. yes, I guess you did have to watch like Infinity War and Endgame to kind of understand, but they kind of clear that up a little bit within it, so you don't have to see those movies. It would make more sense if you did, but I think they did a good job of smoothing it over to make it fairly clear. So Ashley, I want to know what your thoughts are on this, because I know you probably watched like Ant-Man and some of the other movies. Doesn't the enemy in this seem even more terrifying than Kang, like from Ant-Man? Like, I'm more scared of this guy than I am of Kang from Ant-Man. This guy's terrifying. What he's done to all these animals for many, many, many years. He seems scarier than the big baddie that they say is supposed to be the big baddie, you know?
No, I agree. I can
Yeah.
see for sure.
You see the flashbacks and he seems very, oh yeah, no, oh no, execute that.
Yeah.
And then you're like, whoa, you seemed really loving, and now you're just like, execute it. And then when you see him at the end, he's just super angry because he's trying to get back what he lost. And you've torn apart all of my data and stuff. It's like, what you were doing was wrong in the first place, but yeah, okay, get mad about it. So if you were to score the trilogy as a whole, what would you score it out of 5? I'm gonna give it a 4.4. It is great high end action. It's great comedy, visuals, cinematography, great CGI, great action sequences. Makes you feel very, you feel for the characters. But again, at the same time, there's a few moments that kind of lackluster, but I mean, those are just small things. But I think that's why I gave it a little downgrade. But like John C. Reilly's character wasn't. I don't know why they casted him for that role. I mean, he literally had like 4 lines in the whole movie. Why'd you get him? You could have got anyone. But anyway, I'd agree. Besides those little things, and I think the collector scene could have been done a bit better. But that's the only reason why I give it a little bit lower number. But 4.4, I think, is fucking actually massive. So there we go with my number. What do you guys got?
I was gonna say a 4 because the movies are very good, but I feel like how some parts really lack. Just like I noticed how I got bored mostly during the third movie because I just feel like it wasn't the same as the rest.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like anticlimactic, but not anticlimactic, and it was like you kind of knew what was gonna happen, but at the same time you didn't.
It's kind of floated along. Yeah. Ashley?
No, I think that about wraps up Guardians of the Galaxy, I think.
Okay, so next week we're going to be doing your 5 top favorite 80s movies and 5 top cringe of the
Cringy
80s.
movies.
All right, so don't forget, comment, subscribe.
Hit the notification bell.
Thanks, Ashley.
And thank you, Ashley, for being our guest today. Till next time. Bye.